welcome everybody to another episode of Sound Out. I'm your host, Jesse Hubbard. I'm excited about this one today. With me is a hip-hop icon that happens to call Columbus, Ohio home, much like myself, or something I'm very excited about. Also a man of many talents. We're going to get into some of that later in the show, but I'd like to start by introducing today's guest, ILLOGIC, to the show. Thank you very much for being here. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We've been trying to lock this down for a minute.
I know we've been talking about it for a minute, so I'm excited to finally have you on. The hip hop scene here in Columbus versus some of the other cities that may be more known for it than at least I thought Columbus was before I moved here. What do you think is a little bit different for the Columbus scene versus some of the other, the Chicagos, the Atlantas, the LA, New York, all that kind of stuff?
I think honestly, it's just more about access. When you have a place like Chicago, even in Atlanta, New York, LA, you're more in close proximity to a lot more labels. You're more in close proximity to where a lot of the moving and shaking happens. It seems like it would be a little easier in those places, but I think the cool thing about being from a place like Columbus or any smaller town that's not necessarily recognized for especially its hip hop culture is that we get to feed off of all of those places. We get to feed off of, the different coasts. We get to feed a little bit off of the South. And in that it makes us very unique, a unique bed of just musical talent in general, not just hip hop. I think a lot of the artists that do rock music, that do, a lot of different types of music that are from here or from the Midwest in general have a unique view about how they go about creating art because we've been fans of all of the popular stuff from all over the country. And this is just, one of those situations where you see artists like you have an RJD2, you have me, you have Megahertz, you have Blueprint, you have, some of the newer cats like Trigno and Trek Manifest and, Vada Azim, Tage, there's a big mixture of the type of hip hop that we do, and I think that just comes from us being fans of the music overall as a culture of hip hop overall from, all parts of the country.
That's very interesting. In a sense, do you feel that there's a freedom there because you can kind of pick and choose different inspirations as opposed to whereas musicians from any certain region may feel pressure to have that sound, right? That they can the reason. Is there a little bit more freedom for you to do that, you think?
Yeah, that's what I think makes it cool is because we do have that freedom because we're not Columbus artists aren't expected to sound like someone.
Right.
Like if you say you're a rapper and you're from New York, you're expected to sound a certain way. You say you're a rapper and you're from Chicago, you're expected to sound a certain way. From Atlanta, from LA, you're expected to sound a certain way. When you're from the Midwest, place like Ohio, place like Minnesota, place like, there's certain areas where hip hop has blossomed where we've had that freedom to grow and not be pigeonholed into what we're supposed to be doing, what we're supposed to be sounding like, who we're supposed to be listening to, because we are more in the heart, in the heart of the country. So we again get to feed off of everything and we're not expected, we don't have a lot of expectations of what we're supposed to be doing and what we're supposed to sound like.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I mean, it's similar. I'm going to bring it back. So I come from the bar world, right? And that's kind of a similar thing to how I reference a Japanese whiskey, right? I say it's the Wild West of whiskey because there's not this expectation of a protocol that has to be done this way, right? They can kind of pick and choose their different influences, things they like. So who knew, the Columbus music scene and Japanese whiskey were it's just had so much in common, right?
Right.
I'm going to use that as a comparison moving forward. But I guess on a grander scale. So you broke into the scene in the 90s, right? Like mid late 90s, right?
Yeah, late 90s.
Late 90s. So
Yeah.
how has, we kind of covered a little bit, I guess there's not a definitive sound from Columbus necessarily, but how has hip hop in general, in your experience, changed or evolved in the last 25 years or so?
In both positive and negative ways, it has become a lot more free. It has become a lot more diverse. It has become a lot more powerful as well. Um, right now, hip hop is probably the most, sought after and purchased music in the world, and which is crazy when you think about how much rock and roll has influenced the world, and how much even R&B, when R&B was at the top and when rock was at the top. Now hip hop is everywhere, in every language, in every country. There's hip hop. So the fact that it's grown so much, and expanded so much, I think is in some ways a good thing. um, I think the biggest thing that I noticed is the oversaturation. Everybody raps, and everybody thinks that they can. There's even people that make a lot of money that still think that they can, and they're not very good at it. But, that's my opinion. Probably a lot of people's opinion. That
First of all, I think your opinion carries a lot of weight with that. But I also, to your point, you're not the only person with that opinion, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm very sure. But, so the oversaturation has become an issue because you have the problem where the people that are getting a lot of the recognition, and not all of them, of course, because there are, people that have and still do very well and make a lot of money and have a lot of fans that that are doing hip hop, quote unquote, the right way. But when you have the oversaturation, it's harder to be noticed. It's harder to really capture the ear because, for one, people's attention spans are so small now. So you really only have, which is why TikTok is so popular, because you only have 15 seconds really to keep my attention at this point, in life, which is really crazy.
I'm trying the TikTok thing, man. Like, I feel like I've aged out of it.
Yeah,
I have a hard time with it.
I mean, I have a hard enough time keeping up with Instagram, Twitter, and my personal Facebook page. Like, I can't add another one. I just don't have the capacity to add.
And they say you got to do it like every day and stay on top of it. And
yeah, multiple times. I can't. I'm not that.
Sounds exhausting, doesn't it?
Sounds super. It sounds like a job.
It really does.
It sounds like a job.
It really, really does.
Yeah, but when you look at where hip hop has come now, there is a lot more choice out there, because we do have applications like Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube Music, all of these music applications where you can basically, music is a la carte these days. So you can basically find what you're looking for if you're looking. If people are out there looking for the music, then if people are out there looking for the music, then they'll find what they're looking for, because it's readily available as long as you keep your eyes and ears open and you're looking for it. Granted, the music that they play on the radio isn't the most inspiring. It isn't the most, it's not the greatest music. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Goes.
I'm with you. There's, I've always found that the most meaningful music to me in my life has been stuff that I had to do the work to find. It wasn't the stuff that was just handed to me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And there are exceptions to the rule, of course, but
of course. And I think that's the fun thing about music now. I think that's one of the, things that I enjoy about it, because the fact that I can find an artist on Spotify that I never heard of, and then, listen to an album of theirs, and then find other artists that are, similar or attached to that artist that I've never heard of, and open this whole world that I wouldn't have access to any other way, except for if I just dug and dug and dug. And luckily we have these applications and these algorithms that allow us to expand our palette, musically. And I think that's probably the best thing that has happened in music
Hey,
since I've been
that's well said. Very
around.
well said. I couldn't agree more with that. I'm curious. Whenever you got your start, we're talking about how things have kind of changed over the last 2.5 decades or whatever. Um, but everybody starts at some point, and I'd like to know whenever you
Hmm.
started your career and started really making music, what gave you the confidence to know that you had a voice, that you had something to say, and to put yourself out there? Because that's something that I always find so fascinating, and with any form of art, is that
Hmm.
you're so vulnerable when you put something out there, and I always find the stories behind that very interesting. So what gave you that motivation, that push, that confidence?
Well, honestly, I started the first time I ever actually performed rapping was in church. And
Oh,
so I
cool.
started out, doing Christian raps, quote unquote. And so, being in front of that kind of audience and, you know, especially in a time where it was still kind of taboo to have hip hop in church, where hip hop wasn't necessarily accepted in church because of how it was viewed and seen in the media and, all of that. So it was still there was still some resistance even to me doing it. When I was doing it in my church, there was some people that kind of, you know, had an issue with it until they heard me. Until they heard the things that I was saying and how I did it, and that the children that were in the church then actually responded. So that, and also just practicing, rapping at school, in jumping in ciphers whenever I could. And the fact that whenever I did jump into a cipher, it was noticed that I was different. It was noticed that I was, a little ahead of my time as far as the skill that I had when I was younger. Because I was very good at freestyling when I was younger. Not so good, these days. My mind doesn't move as fast because I think a lot of other things are taking precedent, over just finding words to rhyme. But back then I was always the youngest dude around a lot of times. When I would jump into ciphers just on the corner, at places, I was 14, 15 years old, rhyming with grown men. When I won the freestyle competition here in Columbus at the Hip Hop Expo back in, I want to say 96, 97. Um, I was 16, 17 years old, and I was the youngest dude in the competition, and I killed everybody, you know what I mean? When I first started, touring, I was always, it was me and Idea were always the youngest on the tour. We were always the kids, me, Idea, and DJ Abilities. We were always the kids, Idea was a couple years younger than me, actually. Um, so I've always been taken under the wing by, older big brother types, and always, shown that, yo, you got something, and we want to help you develop it. So being around people that, that pushed me in the direction, even my mother knew that there was something special about what I did with words and, what I did with rapping. So having the people around me to push me and tell me that I was good and show me that I was dope, and it didn't hurt that, crowds of people would come to hear me rap on a street corner. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um it was really cool coming up, and getting that confidence, gaining that confidence in the ciphers and, in the streets and churches of Columbus.
No, that's great, and to be able to have people who were in the same game take you under their wing
Hmm.
is is big.
Yeah.
Did you encounter more of that, or did you also encounter resentment from people who maybe older than you and been doing it longer? That you were kind of, how sometimes people get upset because you're taking a piece of their pie, is how they see it.
Yeah.
Did you encounter some of that as well?
Of course. I mean, hip hop is a competitive sport. It's still a sport. People still want to be the best. And, it's just like when the rookie comes in, to the NBA, like the older cats that's been there for a while, they want to kind of show him that you still a young buck, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and there's certain players that you just can't do that to. They couldn't do that to Shaq. They couldn't do that
Nah,
to LeBron. They could, you know what I'm saying? There were certain cats
I
that
do.
came in. Yeah, there were certain cats that came into the league that you couldn't sun. And, you know, I was talented enough to where no matter how much people tried, they could never, quote unquote, put me in my place, because they knew and everybody else knew that I was better than them. And I had no problem showing it, because I started out as a battle rapper. I started out trying to do my best to outdo you as an MC. I came up, you know, making sure that the rhyme that I kicked was better than yours. And there was no way that you were going to tell me that you were better than me. You had to show me, and you had to show everybody else. And most of the time they couldn't do that. They couldn't outshine me on stage. They might be as good, but they would never outshine me. And, you know, it did get testy at times. There was beefs. There was, you know, ex crews that I was in, you know, once I moved and started putting records out and doing those kind of things. There was some jealousy in those situations. You know, we're past all that now. A lot of us are, you know, have become friends again. But there was a lot of shit like that all of us, you know, me, Print, you know, a lot of us that came up here in Columbus had to deal with.
Yeah, it's cool that you guys were able to squash a lot of that and come back around. That's not always the case. But I mean, you mentioned the NBA. I want to talk about that for a minute. Are you a big NBA fan?
Huge NBA fan.
Me too. And I tell you, it's interesting. I don't often encounter a ton of people that are huge NBA fans. Even, you know, it's usually college or football here in Columbus or something like that. Who's your team?
The Lakers.
Yeah.
Always. Lakers been my team since Magic was there.
That's cool. I'm a big Bron fan. You mentioned Shaq. Shaq was my guy growing up. Huge LeBron fan. So Cavs are my team, but I'm really excited to see, you know, you catch some of the games recently. Lakers clinched the 7th seed the other night. That was a great game.
Great game.
That was super fun. So what do you think the Lakers' ceiling are this year in the postseason? They're going up against Memphis in the first round.
Yeah, I think they have the potential to win the championship, but they have to be more consistent. They can't have the brain farts that they have in games that cause them
like
to
AD had in that playing game at the end of the game.
I mean, and just overall, like that game, you know, I think honestly, they didn't necessarily win that game. You know what I'm saying? I think Minnesota lost that game. I think Minnesota had everything going for them to win. Luckily, the defense of the Lakers kind of did what they were supposed to do at the end of the game. But the fact that, you know, Cat was in foul trouble, the fact that, what's the other young dude's name on that team?
Anthony Wiggins?
Anthony Edwards. Yeah, Anthony. Yeah, he had a horrible game. Yeah. He had the worst game probably of the season at the worst time to have it. You know what I mean? And you know, then the Lakers were turning the ball over. You know, AD with the stupid foul at the end where the game could have been over, and then they, you know, so they can't have those brain farts against Memphis because Memphis will make them pay. Memphis
is tough, and they're good, and they think they're great,
right?
Which is important too. You know?
Yeah. I mean, and you have Ja Morant. Like Ja Morant is probably the most exciting basketball player probably since Kobe.
He's the future of the league, I think, without a doubt.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun to watch them in Memphis go at it. I think it's going 7. I don't know who's going to win. I want the Lakers to win. And actually, Steph Curry's my favorite player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I have that whole like dichotomy. Like as long as one of them are in the finals, I'm good. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Memphis series is going to be a great series to watch.
I think it's going to be great too.
Yeah,
it's going to be exciting. I mean, you got like, you know, the guy that has been the face of the league. I mean, Steph too, but you know, LeBron for 2 decades now has been that generational talent. And you got, like I said, who I think is the future face of the league, and Ja. It's going to be very, very exciting. It's kind of a cool moment, and it could be LeBron saying he's not ready to give up that torch yet, or it could be a passing of the torch moment. You know.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
We're recording this. It's Thursday the 13th. This is going to be out Saturday on the 15th.
Okay.
So nothing will have happened yet before you make your prediction. So your prediction is going to be out there. Going 7. I'd be cool with that. And you know, I'd like to see it go 7. What I'm excited about this year, you know, I got the Cavs on my team. LeBron's my guy in the Western Conference. But what I'm excited about is I can't remember the last time that it was this wide open. I have
Oh
no
yeah.
idea who's going to win the championship, and
No,
that's exciting.
no idea at all. I mean, it could be one of probably 6, 7 teams that have the potential to make it. I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, with Golden State's road that they have a very good chance of winning it again. But
they
then,
do.
you look at the East, you got Boston, you got 76ers, you got, you know,
Don't forget about
Cleveland.
Giannis.
Yeah, you got Cleveland, you got the
Milwaukee can do their
Bucks.
thing.
Yeah, Milwaukee can do thing again. And then, Jokic has a lot to prove. KD is on the Suns now with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much Kawhi. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much going on that anybody can win. Like, if anybody catches fire, like, don't let cats start catching fire like second, third round. Oh man, it's wide open.
It really is, and this is, I've got my, guys who I like and I want to see do well, but what's interesting what you just said, and you're absolutely right. Jokic does have something to prove, and I don't know if there's ever been a 2-time defending MVP that still had something to prove.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he has not had that postseason success, and he's got it. They got to go deep. I mean,
they got to.
I don't know. They have to for him to get the respect that I think he deserves. But you don't want that guy. How many legendary players has there been, especially from our era back in the 90s, where maybe they won MVP, maybe they won multiple MVPs, individual awards, never won a championship, right?
Exactly.
And they're not looked at the same way as a Jordan or a Kobe or whoever. So
right.
It's interesting. I'm excited to see. So I'll keep in touch with you over the playoffs here, and it's always good to talk about. This is the best time of the year for me. This is my Super Bowl.
Yeah. And then right after this over, you take a little break, and then college football starts. So like it's
just it just right around. Right around. I do want to say one more thing though before we get off the topic of this, is that talking about the Lakers and and then us being here in Columbus, the addition of D'Angelo Russell on that team has made such a difference. I think I saw, and I didn't even realize this while I was watching that game. Since he came over, and I don't know if it was the exact moment he came over, but in that Westbrook trade, that 3-team trade, when they got Russell and Jared Vanderbilt and then what's the other guy? Malik. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah, I know you're talking
Malik.
about.
He was with the T-Wolves. 16-7. What? Malik Beasley. Yeah, 16-7, the best record in the West since the All-Star break. And so shout out to the Ohio State guy right there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
like to see that. Like to see that.
Yeah.
But we had to talk about that for a minute. As soon as you start bringing up Shaq and LeBron, I'm like, all right, we're gonna get. I got my notes here, but we're gonna go like a little tangent here and talk about.
All good. I don't have a lot of friends that I talk basketball like in depth with, so this is cool. Like I don't have a lot of that.
I feel the same way, man, because like all my friends, they love college basketball, they love football, college or pro, and I got a couple buddies that like the NBA, but I'm just like, I've been going to games my whole life, and those guys, Shaq and Jordan and like Rodman and Penny Hardaway, those were my heroes when I was coming up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just
definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, good talking to you about that. We'll touch on that more the next couple months here for sure.
Word.
But I did want to come back to kind of get back on track of some of the stuff that I was wanting to talk to you about. You're talking about a little bit ago, some of the guys taking you under their wing, and as you were coming up, and which is a really cool thing. I wanted to know who would you consider them mentors, like big brothers? Who were some of the people in addition to that, and maybe kind of the same level? Who are some of those people that inspired you when you were first coming up?
Well, the cats that kind of, looked out, kind of took me under their wing, J. Rawls, he actually was one of those guys that was really doing it already, and one of the crews that I was with, the third, back in the day, back in high school, was my high school crew. The producer, that was, kind of the head of the crew at the time, he kind of, was his mentor in making beats, and so he would come around a lot, you know what I'm saying, and kind of be there and kind of just oversee, some things that we were doing. We always sent him our demos, whenever we finished some things. So, he was always kind of, you know, a guy there in the shadows. But I think one of the biggest mentors that I've had just in the music world has to be Blueprint, because without him, I never would have became the solo artist that I've become. He saw something in me, and brought something out of me that I thought was in there. I just didn't necessarily know how it was going to come out, how to manifest it. But, he was one of those dudes that just kind of took care of me, especially earlier on in my career when I had no business sense whatsoever. All I wanted to do was rap, you know what I'm saying? And being part of the crew with, him and Weightless, he made sure that I was able to rap, because I had a family when I first started. Like I started out with a wife and kid, before, I even put out my second album and started touring and really getting known. So he made sure that I was taken care of and didn't allow, me to do anything too stupid. But make sure that I was able to make money earlier on in my career. And also my cousin, who we're like brothers, we're about 3 years apart. He's 3 years older than me, and he was my first manager. And to this day, like we still, he manages, a couple artists, R&B artists, hip hop artists. And I still consult with him about things. I actually meet with him and some of his artists every week. We kind of go over things that we're doing in life and in music, and shoot ideas to each other. So those are like my main three, but there's a bunch. I mean, just being around Slug and being able to know him early in his career and see where he went, and the things that he did, and having the ability to have conversations with him in that rise and in that come up. Just watching some of the artists that I've gotten to watch and got to be close with, over the years, has been, I couldn't ask for better teachers and better people to just be around, in my journey. Like they may not know that they were mentors to me, but, just talking to Merce here and there, just talking to Brother Ali here and there. Like we weren't close, but, I looked up to those guys and kind of saw the things that those guys were doing and wanted to model, parts of my career after them. So I have a lot of mentors, and some of them don't even know that they are.
Was there any one particular piece of advice that had an impact on you that you still carried with you all through the years, or was it more of just day-to-day conversations and just being in it?
A combination of both. I think one of the things that I've always been told by multiple people is to never be scared to be who I am. Because, when I first started doing what I was doing, there wasn't a lot of room for emotion in rap. There wasn't a lot of vulnerability in hip hop. Hip hop was about being hard. Hip hop was about, having the flyest car and the flyest girls, and, or saying the coolest metaphors and stuff. People weren't talking about their feelings. You know what I'm saying? People weren't talking about feeling emotional and feeling vulnerable and not liking themselves, and, just their religious beliefs, and, how that impacts their life and things like that. So things that I was doing, people weren't really doing a lot of, and they were in my circles, but not, on the mainstream level, and it wasn't seen as cool. So, I got teased a lot, about not like in a bullying way, but just about, the kind of shit that I was talking about when I was rapping. I actually was in a cipher with Guru at a hip hop show. It was called the Smoking Grooves, where there was Erykah Badu, Outkast, Busta Rhymes, Gangstar, the list goes on, Cypress Hill.
Wow.
It was a huge, hip hop show that traveled the country. And me and some of my homies went, and I was high school, young, and got to cipher with Guru. And Guru told me I used too many big words. When I was, what I'm saying? And kind of like dissed me in front of everybody, which I actually wore as a badge of honor. Like, what I'm saying? Like, okay,
yeah.
And the words got bigger after that, so, but I've always been different. And the fact that I've always been different, and I've been around people that have encouraged me to embrace that difference and not change for anybody, and kind of lean in to, my difference and my obscureness about how I presented rhyme and how I presented the art, like those have been the best advice that I've taken with me, this whole time. And that's how I've maintained being who I am.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. It's an important thing to be able to stay true to yourself. But man, it's one of the most difficult things sometimes, especially whenever you're young and you're trying to like build something, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially, but like when you're in the public eye, like you were, at that age, and then coming up, and I can't imagine. So good on you for being able to do that. And by the way, some of the things that you were talking about, kind of like breaking free from when you were younger, and maybe people teased you about it. Those are some of the exact things, like all these years later, that I connected to immediately when listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was aware of you before I lived in Columbus. I knew the name, and I knew some of your stuff, but I was really introduced to you on a more in-depth level by Grayson at 92.9. Do you know him personally?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know him personally or not, but he's such a huge fan of your stuff. And I know him a little bit. I know some of the guys over there, and just a great group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of sent me down the pathway of really checking out your stuff. And there's like, your ability to be so open and honest, and it seems to me like autobiographical, at least when I'm listening to it, but also, I can relate to it. And, that's the beauty of a good artist, I think. And to pay you a compliment here, I mean, like, it's the best compliment I can pay, is to be able to talk about what matters to you and have other people connect to it through their own emotions and their own experiences. And that's hard to do. And it's a beautiful thing whenever it comes together like that. So, kudos, man. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I think that's the thing that make our favorite artists, because, if you even look at, Michael Jackson, you look at, some of the biggest artists that have ever, done music or anything, the fact that people could relate to some of the things that they were talking about in their music, could relate to even knowing about their lives and things in their lives. That's what draws us to people. That's why in this world today, where we have, social media, where we feel like, we can touch, each other, that we're so close to each other, no matter how far away we are, physically, our phones and the internet kind of make us feel like we're, so close. The way that a lot of these kids, are gravitating to some of these artists is because they feel like they know them. They feel like they know their story. They feel like, even if it's not true, even if what they're presenting isn't necessarily true, when you feel like you connect with somebody, then, you become a fan for life. And I think that's what's happened, with me and some of the artists that I still listen to, that, anything they put out, whether it's good or bad, I'm going to check it out just because, I've been a fan of them for so long. I think
there's that, you have that relationship. They've earned that trust, right? So to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No matter what they drop, you're going to check it out, and you might not like it. You know what I'm saying? It might, but you're still going to check out the next one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think building that trust and having that relationship, and being vulnerable enough to let people in, as much as you possibly can, because it's difficult to be that vulnerable. It's difficult to tell people how you feel, to tell people when you're hurt, to tell people what hurt you, like that is very hard. So being able to do that artistically, and being open enough to do that artistically, is the only way that I really ever knew how to do it. You know what I mean? I wasn't a gangster. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in the hood, but I didn't grow up bad. I grew up in a 2-parent household. You know what I'm saying? Like, my parents made good money. Right. Like, I made good grades in school. Like, I didn't, so I don't have like the struggle story that everybody else have, but I did have a lot of emotional shit that I dealt with as a child. You know what I'm saying? So that was what I knew. And that was the way that I knew how to express myself. And it just so happens that, I'm not the only one. You know what I mean? And I think that's what people can relate to the most, is that, some people that don't have that voice and don't know how to voice those emotions, when you find music that, kind of tugs at those strings and kind of repeats the things that you're feeling that you don't know how to voice, that's a connection that, that lasts forever.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Um, and that's a good way to put it. Like sometimes people aren't able to, you know, like verbalize how they feel, but if they
Mm-hmm.
if they hear you talking about something, you know, and then it's just that connection, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like I guess the best way to put it is just it's a release to feel that you're connected to other people through your struggles or whatever it may be, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
alone.
Yeah.
It sounds cliche, but
Yeah.
knowing that you're not, you can feel so alone with some of that stuff sometimes, and knowing that you're not, and then somebody who you would like, one of your fans looking at you, they admire you, you're doing everything that they want to do someday, and you're talking about things that, oh man, I struggle with that too, or that's going on in my life or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. It's
It
extremely
means so
huge.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
I mean, no, go
Yeah. Go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna ask you a little bit. You're talking about Blueprint. I want to ask you about the you guys' show, Super Duty Tough Work, which is a
Yeah.
great name, by the way. I love that name.
Mm.
And that's the one. I listen to the show. I'm a fan, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, it seems like you guys are doing a lot of the similar kind of work that helped you when you were first starting. There's so much good advice, I
Mm-hmm.
think, for not just artists but everybody, but like specifically for people who are trying to do what you guys do. I think there's just a lot of just really great pieces of information and advice in there. How did that show sort of come about and get off the ground?
Well, originally, the show was Blueprint and DJ Rare Groove. Rare Groove was Blueprint's touring DJ, and they started the podcast out on tour. And initially, they would just kind of talk about just the topics of the day. They would find articles about certain things and kind of just discuss them in a half-hour format. And then that kind of fizzled out because Rare Groove actually moved back to, or he lives in Cincinnati, and Blueprint actually lives here in Columbus now. So it was harder for them to record when they weren't touring. So they stopped for a few months, and then Blueprint just kind of asked me if I wanted to pick it up and be a part of it. And basically, he let me know like kind of what he wanted to do was make the atmosphere kind of how the tour van was. Like that was the idea initially, was, because we have these conversations anyway, so
Yeah.
why not, record them and use them to help people? Because, contrary to actually what you said, as far as like, things that were helping us when we were coming up, we didn't have a lot of help. We didn't have a lot of people really giving us advice. We had people that had confidence in us and kind of gave us opportunities in certain situations. But as far as like having a blueprint to make it, quote unquote, in the industry, nobody had really done that from here yet. You know what I'm saying?
So
So we did.
was this sort of a response to that, not having
Yes.
that? Gotcha.
Yep, exactly. Like we wanted to be able, because we had the knowledge and because we knew how hard it was to get where we have gotten in our careers, we wanted to be able to provide a platform or provide information to people that might make it a little easier so they don't have to bump their head 1,000 times like we did. So they can avoid those ditches and those, roadblocks and barricades that we had to, jump over and run into because we had no idea what we were doing. We were just kind of freestyling and finding our way, and it just so happened that, some things we did work, some things we didn't work. You know what I mean? So we have that experience, and both of us have been doing this for over 20 years now. So, we're pretty good authority, on, both of us have had deals, both of us have done things independently, so on and so forth. We're both producers now, both videographers, both photographers. So we have all these kind of things in common, that, and we're the best of friends. So it's easy for us to have these conversations. And I think that's what makes the show so good, is because our relationship is so good. So we, play off of each other very well, but the information is super powerful.
Yeah, and you guys do. it's so real, and you can tell that you guys have a history and a relationship because it's so seamless and it's so real and it's so genuine, and just great show. So like, yeah, I really enjoy it, and I think it's probably doing a lot of good for a lot of people. Do you get that feedback? Do you hear from up and coming artists, or maybe even artists that have been around, that find what you guys are talking about useful?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of stuff that, artists didn't know, you know what I'm saying? Or, cats are looking to release an album and don't know how to run a campaign. They don't know, how to do this, how to do that. And our show has given cats a lot of information to help them, help their careers blossom and, kind of change the trajectory of how they're doing things in their lives and in their music careers.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll be sure to I mean, you guys' show is way bigger than mine, but nonetheless, I'll be sure to plug it in the post. So if there's anybody that doesn't know about it, can check it out.
Word.
Every little bit helps, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll get retweeted or reposted.
Anytime anybody can retweet something, hey, one new listener is one new listener, so why not?
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, and I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened because I didn't watch the Grammys, but I saw a post that you put, and I did watch I watched some of the video after the fact and like the hip hop tribute through the years, and your name was featured on the screen, right?
Yeah.
So how did I
have no idea. I have no idea how it happened. From what and the thing is, like, that picture was taken inside the room. You didn't see it. If you watched it on television, you didn't see my name. But somebody took that picture and sent it to a DJ friend of mine, and he sent it to me like, yo, like, I'm pretty sure that's your name up there,
Yeah.
And like, when I saw it initially, I did some research real quick. I was like, okay, let me see if there's any other rappers in hip hop history that have the name that start out with these letters. You know what I'm saying? That has done something like prominent.
Before I post about it, I want to make sure it's me.
Yeah, let me make sure that this is actually me. So I did a little research and I, found like, yeah, I'm the only, ILLOGIC, you know what I'm saying? Or, I was looking like, is there any like illogical something in the past that I've never seen,
Right.
But, I didn't find anything. So I felt confident enough to post it. But, once I saw Atmosphere up there and A$AP Rock and, cats that I was, like in cahoots with, I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that my name would be up there. But yeah, like, that was one of those things, as a kid, watching the Grammys, especially if you're an aspiring musician of any sort, that's always the goal. When you're a kid, it's always the goal. Like, I want to win a Grammy. I want to be on the Grammy stage. I want to perform there. I want to at least go see it. And, this was probably one of the highest forms of validation for me, as an artist that has been doing this for so long. Because, initially when we do this, all we want to do is be noticed. All we want is for people to see us and tell us we're dope. Like, that's really any artist that does anything, that paints, that picks up a guitar, that does any type of art. We just want people to like our art and tell us that it's good and, go down in history as one of the best to ever do it. And, having my name involved in that on the Grammys, from what I heard, that whole list was curated by Q-Tip and Questlove. I don't know if that's true. But if that's the case, those are two of my musical heroes. So the fact that they even thought about me, you know what I'm saying, had any idea who I was and decided to include me in that, like, people couldn't talk to me for like 2 or 3 days after that. It was my head was so big. You know what I mean?
I thought that was so cool, man. Because like, I knew that they were doing like the tribute thing, and I think I was working. I wasn't able to watch it, so I didn't watch it. So I planned on going and watching it like on video, like on YouTube or whatever, like we always do. And then I saw your post, and I'm like, oh, so I was watching for it, and I couldn't see it live. So that explains why, or not live, but I couldn't see it on the recording because of the way they kept changing the camera angles. I mean, that's so cool. And I was going to ask you about that if you had any idea who curated that list. And I know it's strictly a rumor, but that's cool to have a little bit of insight as to who maybe did that, which is that's awesome, man. I think that was really cool.
Yeah, very dope.
glad to have a little bit of insight on that. So I've been waiting for us to actually sit down and chat about it before I asked you about it, because I was like, oh man, I want to like message him or whatever. I'm like, no, I'll wait. It'd be good. It'd be good to learn about it in the
Yeah, it'd be
moment.
good for the interview too. Yeah,
Good for the interview. That's right. So I did want to ask you before we wrap up here, kind of with the name and the theme of your latest album.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you say in other interviews that you had considered retiring, you've considered following other pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you with that? And what I guess would be next for you if you were to do that?
Honestly, I'm still figuring all of that out. With the transition, it was kind of a inadvertent, you know, path that I was choosing while I was making this album. I didn't necessarily plan on this album dropping and then there being a big transition in my life. But I think I called the album The Transition initially, was because I felt like this was, even though Autopilot was the first album that I produced, I felt like this was the first time, I felt like this was a transition from me to just being a rapper that makes beats to me being a rapper that's also a producer. That's the initial reason why I called it The Transition. But in the process of making it, once it was released, and just how I felt about music and where I saw my life going, it happened to fall right in a huge transition of my life. I don't know if you've heard this on other interviews, but I moved into a new house, just had a grandson that just turned a year old, you know, had my wife, just kind of got over cancer. So that was like a year of our lives. There's so many things that was happening in my life that were transitional things. And in the same time, I'm making this album with that title, and then also not necessarily having a plan afterwards. I'm the kind of artist that always knows what's next. I've always been that way. Since Unforeseen Shadows, when Unforeseen Shadows came out, I was already working on Celestial Clockwork. When Celestial Clockwork before Celestial Clockwork came out, I kind of got lyrics. That was kind of a side project. Me and Blueprint actually recorded in like 3 or 4 days. But
Was that Greenhouse?
No, that was the Got Lyrics album, the second, my second
Oh,
album
gotcha.
that I did with Blueprint. But yeah, when Celestial came out, I was working on other stuff. I was working on stuff here and there. So I've always had something in the oven, and this is the first time that I have put an album out where I don't actually have a plan for what's next. And I was talking to one of my closest friends, Ill Poetic, and he said, dude, like, you've had a plan since you were 17 years old. He's like, it's okay for you to actually not know what's next. He's like, you've earned the right to not have to have a plan. He's like, you've put out, probably close to 20 records. You've done amazing things in your career. You're revered as one of the premier lyricists of our generation. And it's okay. It's okay for you to chill and do some other shit. It's all right. So
sometimes it's nice just to hear somebody else say that. You're like, you know what, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right.
Exactly. So I've really been diving more into my production, getting really deeper into that, working on producing albums for other artists, actually trying to curate some producer focused things here in the city, and maybe even around the country if we can get some of those things popping. Focusing more on my photography and videography, and trying to learn some instruments, but as well as I'll never stop rapping, because rapping is my first love, and it's something that I'm extremely good at, and it's a part of me. So I'll always do it. I just don't know how many full-length albums I have left in me. I know that I'll always write raps. I know I'll always record songs. I know I'll always make beats. So you'll probably see, EPs, 2-3 song EPs here and there. You might just see a song just pop up out of nowhere on, Spotify or YouTube or something. I think I'm in that kind of space where I want the freedom and not the pressure of, having to put, because for one, putting out albums takes a lot of time. It's extremely draining. It's a draining process because I take it extremely seriously when I'm working on a record, and it takes a lot of money. Like putting out albums is not expensive, even when you're not doing vinyl. When you're doing vinyl, then that is exponentially expensive. But, just that, I want to be able to take trips with my wife. I want to go on vacation. I want to, enjoy being a grandfather. I got so many other things that I want to do in my life. And right now, making more albums is not necessarily one of those things, but music is always going to be a part of me, and I'm always going to do it. And who knows, like in 10 years, I might put out another record. In 5 years, I might put one out next year. Who knows, but I'm not putting myself in a box to say like, I'm definitely doing this or I'm not doing it. I'm just allowing, myself to kind of find what's next and be okay with whatever I find.
And one of those things that you are not saying is not definitively saying I'm retiring.
Right.
It's just that you want the freedom to be able to do what you want to do. I think that's awesome.
Yep.
And your friend was right. You've heard that. So
yeah.
Enjoy life a little bit, and still, you're still gonna be putting out, music if you feel like it. You're gonna be producing. So you have, your photography is a really cool avenue to explore as well. Continue going down that path. So no shortage of ventures for you to pursue if you choose to do so. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much for being on the show here. I'm a big fan, and this great talking to you. Just really insightful answers to some of the behind the scenes stuff that I think I know I enjoyed hearing. I think a lot of people will enjoy as well. And I can't thank you enough, man.
Cool, man. Thanks. This was a good conversation, and we'll be in touch about basketball season as the playoffs.
We're going to keep talking about it. Absolutely. All right, friends. Thanks for joining us on the show with the legendary ILLOGIC. We'll see you soon. Until next time, this is Sound Out.